Madam President, you've heard me speak to the Democratic caucus and to the press that moving the continuing resolution, or I should call it the continued funding resolution. Remember, continuing the funding for fiscal year 13 to our fiscal New Year's Eve, October 1st, is our goal. We don't want a government shutdown. We don't want a government slam down, lockdown. So we've been working very diligently on a bipartisan basis to fashion a bill that would get 60 votes. So we'd be filibuster-proof. You know, Madam President, in the old days, majority ruled. Well, now it's supermajority. That's not a fight I'm going to do here on this bill. My job is to keep the government funding, to work on it in a way that is open, transparent, bipartisan, and hopefully bicameral. In order, and I said this was like a helicopter leaving a disaster area, the last one, and I was trying to get, the cargo on it to make sure we protected national security. We honored compelling human need, particularly for women and children in the area of education and health care. We did not, and we also looked at how we could generate jobs, not in government, but where government generated jobs in the private sector, like transportation, and to make important investments in science and technology that came up with the new ideas for the new products that will create jobs in our country and hopefully even export around the world. So that's what I've been trying to do. I also had to give up a lot. I had to give up the funding for Obamacare. This was not my choice. I know that there'll be an amendment offered to even defund it further. I happen to believe in what we did in Senate President Obama's healthcare framework. I liked ending discrimination against women. I liked ending the discrimination against people who have children with pre-existing conditions. I liked funding the preventive amendment that provided access to women for mammograms and to children for early detection and screening. But we couldn't do it. And one of the other things we couldn't do was we could not add a very modest pay raise for federal employees. This bill will continue the existing pay freeze. It's necessary to avoid a government shutdown of the federal government. Shutting down the government would make a tough situation worse for federal employees. It would jeopardize our economic recovery. Shutting down the government would threaten the viability of small and medium-sized business. It would even threaten the safety of our families, our economy, maybe even our country. Madam President, this is not a happy day for me, and it's not a happy day for the millions of people who work diligently for the federal government. I have the great honor to represent 130,000 federal employees. And I wish you could tour Maryland with me the way I've been up to your home state. Each one doing important work to the nation. And who are these employees? They're people who work at the National Institutes of Health, finding cures or ways to contain disease, the next vaccine to help either the flu endemic or protect us against a pandemic. They're the civilian employees at the National Security Agency. We employ the largest number of mathematicians in the world. And what do? They invent the kinds of technology that breaks the codes and protects us now in this whole new cyber domain. They're the people who run the weather satellites. They might have made, the European model might have did a better job last week than they did, but you know why? Because we haven't had the resources to fund the way the Europeans have. So I have employees at FDA right this very minute. They are at their job looking at medical devices to see if they're safe. Right this very minute, They're working with the private sector who are bringing them new pharmaceuticals, new biotech and biologics that they could look at to see if they're safe and effective, that they could go into clinical practice to help save lives here and be certified by the FDA that would give us the ability to sell them around the world. But we say to them, yeah, we know what you're doing, but tough luck. We can't give you a pay raise because we say we have out-of-control spending. I don't think we have out-of-control spending. Yes, do we have to be more frugal? Do we have to be smarter? Do we have to get more value for the dollar? Absolutely. We're on to that part of it. But don't attack federal employees for the mismanagement of the federal economy. That's right here. That's right here. That's what we do. Don't blame them, and don't make them pay the price. It's like making the middle class pay the price for more domestic cuts while we protect subsidies to corporate jets. But I'm one to these 130,000 federal employees. They help run the Hubble Space Telescope. More discoveries, the most important telescope since Galileo invented the first one. I can't tell you how bad I feel that we're not at least giving them a 0.05% pay raise. And they're facing sequester, which could mean for many of them a 20% pay cut if they are furloughed. Now, I said earlier, I visited NIH to see what was the impact of sequester. There was Dr. Mary Gridner from Hopkins who was there also. She just won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago. Our kind of, we're really proud of her. And NIH said within the week of our arrival, my arrival there, to meet with them as I've done so often, they cut cancer rates 15%. Instead of pinning medals on them, we say, you don't get a pay raise. Hey, we have more important things to do with the money. You are a problem. I don't think they're a problem. I don't think they're a problem at all. I think they're part of the solution, coming up with helping compelling human need and creating jobs in our country in life sciences and giving us something to sell overseas. I think it's wrong to keep asking them for more when oil and gas companies make record profits and we don't ask them to give tax breaks. It's wrong to keep asking them for more when we can't close one tax loophole that benefits corporations that send jobs overseas. When Senator Murray brings her bill up, I'll talk more about these lavish tax earmarks. This isn't the time and this isn't the place. But it is the time and the place to start saying we have to respect our civil service. Senator Rubio just spoke about Egypt, and he said they have to be able to govern. It's not enough to just, bring down a dictator. That's an excellent point. We got to govern too. And the hallmark of a democracy is a civil service that has integrity, that is promoted on the basis of meritocracy, that is independent of politics, doing missions that serve the nation in research, technology, administering programs that help get transportation funding to governors to build roads, bridges, and our pent-up demand in physical infrastructure, and then in human infrastructure, education, healthcare. That's what a democracy does, and you need a civil service that is independent, has integrity, and is promoted and hired and so on in the basis of meritocracy. What is the hallmark of a despotic, autocratic government? Be they communist or just plain despots? They are corrupt. You get ahead by taking a bribe, by doing a party favor, by looking the other way, and so many other things, where you can't even open a business or get a permit or so on unless there's a series of tipping fees. You can't get through an airport unless you bribe your way through it. That's what a corrupt, despotic, autocratic government. But when you visit democracies, the first thing that you see is that they have a civil service. And what is the civil service? Integrity, competency, incorruptible. But we say, yeah, you know, we know you have your PhD, or we know that you're the blue-collar worker that manages the facilities at NIH that keeps the lights going on so that the researchers could do their work. It's those people that help us have a great country and a country we can be proud of. Now, I hope we resolve this sequester thing with layoffs and furloughs and potential cuts of 20%. I wish that we could have at least said one thing to the federal employees, that we're at least going to give you a 0.05, a half of 1% pay raise. I didn't like it because I thought it was so skimpy and Spartan. But I will say this. The helicopter couldn't take off if it was on it. I think this is a terrible mistake, and I hope that in next year's regular order, we can make this up. But I want to say to my federal employees, this was a draconian choice. Do we try to give you a pay raise that would be important to you? Every penny and every dollar counts. You led a consumer protection agency. You certainly have a reputation of being, Madam President, a real fighter for the consumer. And you were the first in America to do a study that showed that people were going bankrupt, not because they bought too many Volvos, ate out too much, or just lived a life of brie and wine and so on. It was because of medical catastrophes that faced them. Medical catastrophes. You were the first to tell us about that. So you know family incomes and what makes them and what breaks them. But I say this to you, thank you for your work. And I want to say to the federal employees, thank you for your work. I wanted to do it with the modest pay raise. But right now, the duty in the situation that I find myself, reluctantly, is that the way I serve you is to make sure there is no government shutdown. Because you know what? In my heart and in my mind, and as I see the functioning, there is no such thing as a non-essential federal employee. Everybody doing their job, everybody at the workplace, everybody serving the nation, everybody doing it with honesty, integrity, meritocracy, incorruptible. Let's make sure we honor them. We have to get this bill done. Let's go on to the Murray budget. Let's write our economy. And whatever problems we solve, don't blame the federal employees for the decisions that were made by the Congress to get us in the deficit and debt that we are in. They didn't do it. We did it. We should take the pay cut, not them. Madam President, I yield the floor.